Hey everybody, this is Brian. It's really late. It's 11:47 p.m. In Columbia, South Carolina. Sara, Azari, NewsNation contributor, Angenette, Levy, long crime. Don't yawn, Angenette.
I'm sorry. Yes, it's late.
I know it's been a long day with the Murdoch hearing. If you've been following, he had his big hearing today. Alex Murdaugh about whether or not he would be getting an appeal.
No, a new trial.
A new trial. Yeah, the appeal comes next.
Right.
Really quick, I just want to play. Ultimately, if you've been following it, the judge decided no, but it was still a very eventful, really pretty crazy hearing. I want to just play for really quick a few highlights from the judge, her ruling on not granting the new trial, but her calling out the clerk, Becky Hill, and also a little bit of one of the jurors who testified about juror really tampering from the clerk, Becky Hill. Take a listen.
Was your verdict influenced in any way by the communications of the clerk of court in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
And how was it influenced?
To me, it felt like she made it seem like he was already guilty.
All right, and I understand that, that's the tenor of the remarks she made. Did that affect your finding of guilty in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
It didn't matter to me if it was guilty, not guilty, or a mistrial.
Well, in your book, you suggest that the guilty verdict was what you wanted, and you were fearful that that a guilty verdict would not be rendered. You say that a lot about your feeling about wanting a guilty verdict, do you not?
I do agree that that is said in the book, and part of that is because I think it was a guilty verdict.
I find that the clerk of court is not completely credible as a witness. Ms. Hill was attracted by the siren call of celebrity. She wanted to write a book about the trial and expressed that as early as November 2022, long before the trial began. Did Clerk of Court Hill's comments have any impact on the verdict of the jury? I find that the answer to this question is no. I do not feel that I abuse my discretion when I find the defendant's motion for a new trial on the factual record before me must be denied.
Okay, so now I want to talk to Angenette and Sara about this. Angenette, you were in the courtroom all day.
Yes.
I mean, it really was kind of crazy.
It was crazy.
It was. I mean, I need you to. I know it's been a while. I need you to wake up.
It was a massive circus in the beginning. There was a whole bunch of drama because in the beginning, the first juror Z, came in and she was saying everything the defense wanted or needed to get a new trial. She was saying that Becky Hill said things and that it influenced her. It made her feel like Alex Murdaugh was guilty, and that influenced her verdict or her voting for a guilty verdict.
Right.
And so you're thinking you're hearing her talk, and you're like, wow, ding, ding, ding for the defense.
Yeah.
Like, this is very helpful to them. But you have to keep in mind there were still 10 other jurors. It's late, I can't do math. 10 other jurors in the back who were going to come out and testify in front of Justice Toll. Well, come to find out that they had turned on cell phones in the back room.
Oh, this is a whole crazy thing I was going to get to. Yeah,
And
you heard
we're-
about this. Yeah.
And somebody, watching on the cell phone.
They were not supposed to listen to each other's testimony,
Yeah.
but they were watching court TV.
They were
Yes.
live streaming in the jury room,
And
and the bailiff forgot to take their cell phones. Apparently.
They were not confiscated.
Yeah.
So Justice Toll comes out, and
She
she's
looked
like,
so pissed.
She was like,
looked so
for the
pissed.
love of God, they pulled me out of retirement for this, to do this, and now this. And so then she's like, okay, I got to put something on the record. And everybody's like, really? How is this even happening?
Yeah.
And so, but only I think 2 or 3 of the jurors said they knew cell phones were on, or that 2 had maybe looked at their cell phones because they had activated them. And
And she was trying so hard, it seemed like, to keep everything in control, and then it was like...
Yeah,
Of
she
course,
obviously
she-
had a way she wanted this to go
And
down.
then it was chaos with the
She
cell
decided, I
phones.
was going to say, you said that today the judge decided, and I'm like, no, she decided a long time ago what the result was going to be. It was about how to get there, and I think that when I heard on the 16th of January when they were in court and she set the parameters and the rules for today, I knew this was going to happen because she clearly made it clear that the defense will not be able to question any of the jurors, that she was going to do the questioning. So, this is the defense's motion. So the judge is going to take control of the case and basically not, how do you think we get jurors or witnesses, in this case the witnesses or jurors, to testify? Like, we ask them certain questions in a certain way, right? That's just the craft. And so when you take that away from us and the judge is doing that, it's because she already, she was very much, this person can't testify, these people will testify, and only I get to answer the questions. And by the way, the standard is not what you're claiming it is. It's a whole other case, which is, her ruling there was erroneous. But essentially, like Angenette said, they met that standard when this jury said that it did impact my verdict. Because the defense, remember, has always been arguing a U.S. Supreme Court case, Raymer, saying that the impact on the jury does not matter. It matters that it was a court official and the communication was about a material fact. That's all we need to prove. And then Toll said, no, you actually have to prove that it did impact the jury, which is, anyway, it's the wrong case that she's applying. But they even met that today. Like, I was like, oh my God, it's like, this case keeps like twisting and turning.
Yeah, and it was interesting that she took that recess at the end after all this testimony all day. I think it was like a 15-minute recess. I thought she would say, I'm going to issue a ruling.
I thought she was going to
And not only did
take it under submission and come back
and
later.
I'll be back at 5. And
she wanted this done today. It was clear.
Right. And by the way, that was disingenuous because there's no way that lengthy, elaborate opinion that she read, the ruling.
Well, that's what I was going to say. There's no way
15
she
minutes.
wrote all that in 15 minutes. But it really was interesting to hear the juror say that Becky Hill influenced her decision based on the things that Becky Hill had said. Mm-hmm. What was the one thing before Murdoch testified? She said Becky said something like
watch his body language.
Yeah, watch his body language. Like don't she didn't say don't be fooled, but
so
almost
typically
something like
in that, so just what you
mean,
just
isn't
said
that
right
enough?
now. No, well, so listen, the government then has the duty to come in and cross-examine that juror and try to impeach her with her affidavit and say, wait a second, but here you didn't say that. Here you said that, whatever she said in her affidavit that Toll used as an inconsistency. The thing is, both things could be true.
Yeah.
Those are not inconsistencies. It's just an added fact. But Toll did the government's job for them and, wrapped it up with a nice bow, saying that it's either or. It's either that you were pressured by the other jurors or, it was Becky Hill's influence on you. But it could be both things.
And even if you don't like Alex Murdaugh, and a lot of people don't, and he's a convicted murderer, and you have a podcast with his attorney, so we'll just put that out there. And, you do kind of have a side to all this.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, for even people watching who hate the man, there's still a process. There's still the Constitution. There's still
a right to a fair trial.
Yeah, there's issues. And of course, we'll respect the judge's decision. As journalists too, it's like that's not my job to say she did.
I don't practice in South Carolina, so I don't give two
but
shits.
I know, but I'm just saying there were clear issues with this clerk. It was pretty clear today. You can just say that it's just black and white.
Toll made a record.
The judge basically ripped her apart in her.
Yes.
And the one thing that really struck me was. She said on the stand, she was questioned by the judge, Clerk Becky was, and denied everything. And then this one part about, did you ever give a juror a ride home? And she said, no, I did not.
But that was a lie.
Then they bring in Clerk Rhonda from a neighboring Clerk Rhonda who was my favorite in the whole thing. Clerk Rhonda from a neighboring county comes in, who has no dog in the fight,
Right.
and she just shows up to help Clerk Becky for the 6 weeks because she's like, Clerk Becky needs
she
help.
has no book deals.
Correct.
And
because Clerk Becky had never done a
correct.
murder
Clerk
trial
Becky
before.
had never. And so the
help.
judge says,
Yeah.
did Clerk Becky ever say anything about giving a ride home with someone? Oh yeah, she told me about it, and I told her you should never do that.
Liar.
Meanwhile, like an hour earlier, she had just told the judge.
Yeah.
That's
perjury. That's a
also,
crime.
she told the judge, Clerk Becky did, that I never thought about, and correct me if I'm wrong, Angenette, but I never thought about writing a book or talked about writing a book until the trial started. Clerk Rhonda comes in and says, even before the trial, Clerk Becky said to Rhonda, we should write a book. I'll get a lake house. I'll get the money for a lake house. And what did she say,
Rhonda said she wanted to get a lake house and I could retire.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Oh my
isn't that
God.
crazy?
But she was already like, I mean, listen, she wrote don't forget about that letter she wrote to the ethics committee asking about the ethics of writing the book. I can't remember the date, but it was very early on, maybe even been before the trial.
I have that opinion.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
And they basically said to her
She lied to them. She didn't tell them she's going to write about the Murdoch trial. She said she's going to write about the trial process. Okay, this case is a specific case. It's not the trial process.
And she also admitted to plagiarism since all of this.
Right. I mean, she's a mess. She's in trouble. But focusing on Alec, Becky's not charged with anything yet. Alec, is convicted, like you said. This whole thing has been rigged from the beginning. Think back to the way they handled the murder scene and how they didn't process it, how they didn't contain it. Think back to Agent Owens from SLED, misleading the grand jury about human blood on the t-shirt, then changing the theory to Mr. Clean, he showered and he hosed down, all that crap. Think back to the 3 weeks of financial evidence, in a murder trial.
See, honestly, I don't think I ever thought it was rigged during the trial. I don't know that I still think it was rigged.
Rigged is
but
rigged
this
is
Clerk
Sara
Becky stuff to
talking,
me is like a problem.
Yeah.
Well,
but I see the whole
Miss Becky
thing.
is clearly a problem and was a problem and is a problem.
Yeah.
It's not going away. She, was clearly prepped for her testimony. The state came out and conceded and admitted they met with her and she was prepped. She obviously was caught in many fibs, untruths, whatever you want to call them, by Justice Toll. Justice Toll impeached her.
Yeah.
And people will say, well, that doesn't matter.
And you could tell that the judge was not buying it, I thought, during the testimony.
Totally.
She was not digging.
She was not buying what
Miss
she was
Becky.
selling.
What else has stood
But
out
I'm
to
sorry,
you?
can I just say
Yeah.
something that no one else is talking about? But again, I don't practice here, so I don't care. Creighton Waters, he's got some problems too, okay? Because a prosecutor should not be receiving information from a clerk and not letting the judge and the defense know during the course of a trial. And he did that. And then just recently, with respect to this evidentiary hearing that took place today, it came out on January 16th that he had received discovery related to this hearing and he had not disclosed it to the defense. So, I mean, I don't know why things in South Carolina are not actionable as swiftly as they should be or ever. But like this kind of stuff, if it happened in where I practice, like LA or New York or somewhere else, it would be chop. I mean, I keep asking people that practice here, I'm like, what, are you filing a bar complaint? What's going on? But it's almost like everyone just wants to, no one wants to like rock the boat. Everyone just wants to scratch each other's backs and, it's a brotherhood. And I don't subscribe to that, but it just to me was like, is there anybody in this case that is clean? I mean, we're talking about how horrible Murdoch was. Nobody in this case has really been ethical, in my opinion.
Is there anything else that stood out to you today? Like that you're like thinking about tonight at almost midnight?
Well, Blanket Lady, I call her Blanket Lady. The
Egg
alternate.
Lady?
No.
Oh, it's a different one.
No, not Egg Lady didn't testify.
Right.
But Blanket Lady, I always called her Blanket Lady because she was
would
the one.
cover her, yeah.
She always had a blanket, and nobody remembers Blanket Lady except for probably a few of us who were in the courtroom for the trial, because she would have a blanket and she'd always pull it up like this, and then sometimes she would get annoyed and pull it up over her head, or she'd close her eyes. And she also supported some of the assertions.
Was she the alternate today?
Yes.
Yes.
And she supported some of the assertions made by the defense. However, she did not deliberate.
Yeah.
But her
she did support some of it.
But she corroborated Z.
On
right,
some
that's
of
what
the
I'm
stuff.
saying.
On some of the
She
stuff,
supported some
Yeah.
of, yeah. So that stood out to me. Just the fact that I think it's very clear at this point that Becky was dishonest
And unethical.
and she you know, this whole thing, she was going to write the book before the trial. I mean, she was talking about it before the trial, and she said, well, you know, it was a thought or whatever. And she didn't really make much money, like $100,000. I'm sorry, $100,000
Yeah.
to
It's a lot of money for a
from
court clerk in Columbia.
Colleton
Or
County.
Colleton
Yeah,
County, yeah.
that sounds like a lot of money to me.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if you ask any of those jurors from Colleton County, they'd think $100,000 was a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, and I was never during the trial, I don't know, I was never like in the cool kids club, like with the reporters. I don't know why, but like there were always like parties and stuff, and I think you went to
They
some
were not
of them.
inviting you?
I don't
messed
know. I
up.
just, it's like high school. I do my own thing, you know?
I was only, see, that's the thing. I was at the trial the first week and the last week, and the only party I ever went to was the media party the night before the verdict.
Well, there
that
were
was at the
some
Wildlife
parties
Center.
along the way. 'Cause
Yeah, I
people
heard about the parties.
And I feel like you know more about, but like what I'm getting at is other reporter friends I have, Clerk Becky would be at these functions, and now people are saying like
She was schmoozing the media.
yes,
Like,
yes,
Yeah.
and I think people are realizing that now.
Yes.
Whereas in the moment you're like, oh, it's a small town, people are just friendly, and she would help you out. But now it's kind of like, oh,
I mean, a court, like, just so your viewers can really be reminded of the relationship that lawyers have with, you know, a clerk, or just the clerk has with anybody else in the courtroom. Like, you know, we're not even allowed to like bring candy to them. Like, they're not supposed to take sides, you know. They are very much the courthouse. I mean, they represent the judge, they represent the court. So it's a serious job. I mean, I think people think like, oh, they're just pushing paper or something like that. But I mean, it's really bad what she did, and I just look at the big picture and I'm going, this just keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
But the
And,
big
like,
picture too, I try to think about this today. I mean, yes, what she did is bad, but maybe the judge is right. Like, would that really have changed the outcome? Like, even if she hadn't
but that's not the
done
standard.
the things, like
The standard is either standard. One standard is the communication was material, which obviously it was. It had to do with the defense and his testimony, period. And it was by a court official. And that's what the defense argued was the standard. The standard that the court adopted, which is a South Carolina Supreme Court decision versus a U.S. Supreme Court decision, was that no, it has to be material and improper and have changed the outcome of the verdict. And that's very hard to prove. And they almost did it. But she decided, oh, these are
change it,
inconsistent. No, they're not inconsistent. They're complementary.
Yeah.
They can both exist. So it's like I said, she had made up her mind. Remember that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of South Carolina, who appointed Judge Newman to the Murdoch trial, is like best buddies with her. I think it's Justice Beatty, I've heard. And put her in place. I mean, it's a very tight-knit community.
what happens
here.
next? Do you know, Angenette, how it all plays
Well,
out?
they're going to have to get the transcript from this hearing, and then the defense will appeal. They'll file an appeal. How long that takes, I don't know. But
Well, the case is on appeal. It got stayed.
Right.
So then it got sent
But-
back to, but it'll go back.
They never filed an appeal. Is my
They did file an
point.
appeal.
Well, they filed a notice of appeal.
No.
They filed.
Oh,
their
they were
motion
waiting
a
for the
new
transcript.
trial,
Yeah, they were waiting for the transcript.
which is
So
what
it'll
you
just go
said.
back to the appellate court.
but they've never filed an appeal per se. Like, they filed the motion for a new trial with their request to stay the appeal.
Correct.
And then they went back and
Yeah.
But they haven't filed like
Because they didn't
an
have the
appeal.
transcripts. Yeah.
So that's what
Yeah.
comes next.
Yes.
So they have to get all the transcripts from the trial, from this, and the. However, there is a South Carolina rule that, given the proceedings today, allows the defense to file appeal, essentially the case, directly to the Supreme Court. So they are going to be able to circumvent the appellate court.
Oh, so that's what they will do.
Yeah, they will do that. And then once they exhaust the state remedy, they can then go to a federal district court. That's where Alex Murdaugh will absolutely get his conviction
Will
overturned.
that be in the habeas petition?
Yes, it would be a habeas petition in
You're
the
so
federal.
smart, Angenette.
I've covered
This
this
is why I
stuff
love
for like
Angenette.
20 years.
It would be
Like,
a habeas
you know all the
petition.
little details.
Can I just vent for a second?
Yeah.
Okay. So on Twitter, it's hilarious. I've had people trying to tell me for like weeks now that clerks can talk to jurors. Clerks can do that. I know that a clerk can talk to a juror. Guess what? I've been a juror, for all people on Twitter that think they're experts in this, even lawyers. I've been a juror twice, okay? Once like 20 years ago, another time like 4 or 5 years ago. I was an alternate 4 or 5 years ago. And in both of my experiences with being a juror and with covering this stuff for 20 years, I have never seen a clerk of court interacting with jurors. It's always a bailiff.
Right.
Okay. And the bailiff is like, oh, okay, like you guys need anything? What time do you want to do lunch? Or, oh, the judge's docket is running late. This, that, and the other.
Procedural matters.
Yeah. All these people, even lawyers here in South Carolina, it's shocking to me. Like, I'm like, do you actually go to court? You might go to court. You might go to a courthouse. Have you ever done a trial? Have you really ever done a trial? Because obviously you haven't. If you think that it's okay for the clerk of court to be traipsing around the jury and saying
And that's
things,
the issue.
That's not
the green
how it
case.
works.
The green case. The
It's
judge.
not how it works.
Yeah.
No.
It's the freaking bailiff who is.
Yeah.
Excuse my language. Sorry, bleep that, Brian.
Yeah.
It is no, don't bleep it because then people will
Look,
think
you're
I really
banging on
curse.
everything.
But
You
no,
really are
it's the
passionate.
bailiff. It's the bailiff who is in charge of the jury, not the clerk of court going in and talking about how this is going to be an epic day. If anything, she should be avoiding the jury.
Right. And the green case that Judge Toll adopted, the standard that she used, actually involves a bailiff and a procedural issue. He was telling the jurors like about where to stay at a hotel or whatever, something like that. And so that is a customary communication. It's a okay communication to have, but had nothing to do with this case. This involves a court clerk. It involves a material issue. So anyway, but this will go through. I think they'll go straight to the Supreme Court of South Carolina, and then if it gets denied there and his conviction stands, then they'll go to a federal district court, and then from there a circuit court. So,
And it could take a very long time, even
Yeah.
for the appeal at the Supreme Court to run its course. I mean, it could take years.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to let you guys go to bed.
I
Thank
need
you,
to go to
Angenette.
bed.
I appreciate it
Yeah,
very much.
no problem.
thank you
Thank you,
guys.
Sarah.
Thanks for picking me up from the airport.
Thank you guys for watching, and we'll continue to follow it. All right. See you guys.